The wind at the rail depot cut through Matthew Sullivan's coat like a knife through butter. 5 in the morning, January cold, and the freight car door handle was slick with frost beneath his leather gloves. His breath formed white clouds in the dim lamplight as he pried the door open with stiff fingers. 49 years of Wyoming winters had taught him to expect the cold, but this morning carried a particular bite that settled deep in his bones. Inside the freight car, shadows played across stacked crates and burlap sacks. Matthew raised his lantern, casting light into the darkest corner. The flame wavered, illuminating a small form curled against a pile of grain sacks. A child. A girl, perhaps 7 years old, her lips tinged blue in the lantern light. Pinned to her collar was a scrap of paper with a single word scrawled in charcoal. Unwanted. Matthew stood frozen for only a moment before setting down his lantern and removing his coat. He wrapped it around the child's thin frame, noting how her skin felt like ice beneath his calloused fingers. When he lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, as if she might dissolve into the frigid air. As he carried her through the town square toward Dr. Harrison's house, Matthew heard the creak of the boarding house porch. Eleanor Fisher stood watching, her arms folded against the cold, whispering to the merchant beside her. Sullivan playing hero again. Matthew ignored them, focused on the shallow rise and fall of the child's chest against his shoulder. The doctor's house appeared ahead, a single light burning in the window despite the early hour. Dr. Harrison met him at the door, took one look at the bundle in Matthew's arms, and ushered him inside. Pneumonia, the doctor said after a brief examination. She needs $18 worth of laudanum and proper care. Matthew reached into his pocket and counted out his money on the doctor's kitchen table. 3 silver dollars and 6 coins. $9.40. All he had until the cattle sale next month. Dr. Harrison looked at the money, then at Matthew. Keep it. You'll need it for food if you're taking her in. Can't take charity, Doc. It ain't charity if I'm deciding. The doctor's kitchen smelled of old coffee and carbolic acid. He mixed laudanum with honey in a tin cup and carefully tilted the child's head back, coaxing 3 spoonfuls down her throat before she coughed weakly. She's been out there for hours, Harrison said, pressing 2 fingers to the girl's throat, counting under his breath. Maybe all night. The stove's iron belly ticked as it heated. Matthew heard the girl's breathing, shallow and wet, like the sound of water trapped under spring ice. Harrison wrapped the child in a wool blanket and settled her near the stove. She'll need watching. Fever's going to spike before it breaks. Matthew stood there, hat in his hands, feeling the weight of his years and no clear answer to the unspoken question between them. What next? Hours passed. The doctor dozed in his chair while Matthew kept vigil. Just before dawn, the girl stirred and began to hum in her half-conscious state. The tune froze Matthew where he sat, a lullaby he hadn't heard in 3 years. Sarah's lullaby, the one she used to sing while kneading bread on quiet mornings. You hear that? Harrison asked quietly, now awake and watching Matthew's face. Matthew nodded, not trusting his voice. Might be coincidence. Might be, Matthew agreed. But it wasn't, and they both knew it. By morning, the girl was breathing easier. Dr. Harrison had kept her through the night, and Matthew had ridden back to his ranch in the dark, 5 miles of frozen road and too many thoughts crowding his mind. When he returned at dawn with fresh clothes and blankets, Harrison had her sitting up, sipping broth. She's got a name, Harrison said. Asked her twice. Says it's Lily. Matthew crouched by her chair. Lily, I'm Matthew Sullivan. You're safe now. She looked at him with eyes the color of summer sky. Sarah's eyes, he realized with a jolt of recognition that felt physical. Where's Mama? The question sat in the room like a stone. Matthew didn't have an answer that wouldn't break something. Don't know, child, but you're safe with me. She nodded, too tired to argue, and returned to her broth. The Sullivan Ranch was a day's quiet, chores and wind, and the sound of his own boots on the wooden floors. Matthew set Lily in Sarah's old rocking chair near the hearth, tucked a quilt around her thin shoulders, and watched her watch him as he moved through the room, fetching firewood, stirring the stew pot, saying little. His land stretched 160 acres, with a small creek running along the eastern border. The barn and corral stood 30 yards from the main house, sturdy structures he'd built with his own hands when he and Sarah first claimed the homestead 22 years ago. The fields lay fallow now under winter snow, waiting for spring planting. Mid-afternoon, Eleanor Fisher arrived with a basket of supplies: bread, dried apples, a jar of preserves. She set them on the table, glanced at Lily, then at Matthew. "You keeping her till she's well?" "Reckon so." Eleanor folded her arms. She was 52, a widow herself, and didn't waste words. "County assessors coming in March. Family continuity review." Matthew frowned. "What's that mean?" "Means they check if a homestead's got family living on it, blood kin, or legal adoption." Eleanor's voice was matter-of-fact. "Widowers without heirs sometimes lose their land." "That's a damn fool law." "It's territorial law. Been on the books 2 years now." Eleanor looked pointedly at him. "You ought to know about it." Matthew stared at the fire. He'd heard rumors but figured it didn't apply to him. He had the land, the deed, 22 years of work in the soil. "You saying I could lose this place?" "I'm saying you ought to be careful." Eleanor's voice softened. "I lost my Thomas's claim last year. Same law." "Who handled the paperwork?" "Maxwell Parker, county land registrar." Matthew had seen Parker at town meetings, was slick-talking, always smiling, always with an answer that sounded right until you thought about it too hard. "I'll figure something out," Matthew said. Eleanor nodded, started to leave, then paused at the door. "Sullivan, that girl, she looks like Sarah. You see it?" "I see it." After Eleanor left, Matthew sat in the chair opposite Lily, watching her sleep. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. He thought about Sarah, about the house fire 3 years ago, about the fact that he'd been at the market in Cheyenne when it happened. 20 miles away, selling cattle while his wife burned. He'd saved one thing from the fire: their homestead certificate, signed it in 1861. The edges were charred, the ink smudged, but it was legal. It was proof. He kept it on the mantel next to Sarah's Bible. Lily stirred, opened her eyes. "Where's Mama?" she asked again, her voice small and lost. Matthew leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Don't know, child, but I reckon she wanted you safe. That's why you're here." Lily looked at him for a long moment, then closed her eyes again. Matthew sat back, feeling the ache in his chest, the kind that didn't come from work or cold, but from something deeper. He didn't know who this child was or why she'd been left at the depot, but he knew one thing: he wasn't leaving her to the county wagon. Not after hearing Sarah's lullaby in her voice. February came with a town meeting at the courthouse. Matthew didn't want to go, but Eleanor insisted. "You need to hear this," she'd said. "Parker's making an announcement." The courthouse square was packed, 40, maybe 50 people crowding the steps and spilling into the street. The air smelled of wet wool and tobacco smoke. Matthew stood near the back, hat pulled low, trying to stay invisible. Lily remained at the ranch with Dr. Harrison checking on her. Maxwell Parker climbed the courthouse steps, his boots loud on the wood. He was a lean man, sharp-featured, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He held up a sheaf of papers. "Good people of this territory," he began, his voice carrying across the square, "I'm here to inform you of a review process. Territorial Code Section 412. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Matthew felt his jaw tighten. Parker continued, "This law has been on the books 2 years, meant to prevent land speculation, keep homesteads in the hands of working families." He paused. "But it also means widowers without heirs, spinsters without kin. They got to prove family residency, blood relation or legal adoption. Otherwise, the land reverts to county control." A voice called from the crowd. "What happens to the land?" "Gets resold, fair auction. Revenue goes to territorial development." Matthew's stomach turned. Fair auction. That meant Parker's friends, the railroad investors, the men with money. Parker shuffled his papers. Already processed 3 cases last year. Benjamin Hollis lost his claim in June. Samuel Turner, August. He looked directly at Eleanor. Thomas Fisher, September. Eleanor's face went pale. Matthew knew Thomas Fisher had been her husband. Knew he died 2 years back, leaving Eleanor with a boarding house and no children. Someone called out, "How much notice they get?" 60 days, standard procedure. Matthew's hands clenched. 60 days to prove something that shouldn't need proving. Parker scanned the crowd, his gaze settling on Matthew. And I see we've got another case pending. Matthew Sullivan, widower, no documented heirs, took in a child recently. His voice dripped with false concern. Charitable, no doubt, but charity ain't family under the law. Every head turned. Matthew felt the weight of 50 eyes, heard the whispers starting. He stepped forward. That girl's my kin. Parker's smile widened. And you'll have no trouble providing documentation. Birth records, marriage certificates, proof of relation. I'll get it. You've got 60 days, Sullivan. Clock starts today. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Matthew turned and walked away, his boots heavy on the frozen ground. Behind him, the murmurs grew louder. That evening, Eleanor showed up at Matthew's door. She didn't wait for an invitation, just walked in and set a worn leather journal on the table. Found this last week, she said. Your wife's diary. She'd loaned it to me before the fire. Asked me to read a passage about her mother's recipes. Matthew stared at the journal, Sarah's handwriting on the cover. S. Sullivan, 1875. Why are you showing me this now? Eleanor opened it to a marked page. Because of what's written here. Matthew read, April 12, 1876. Rebecca wrote from Omaha. Her baby girl was born 3 weeks ago. Club foot, poor thing, but the surgery went well. She named her Lily. I told Matthew we should bring them here once Rebecca's strong enough. This territory is no place to raise a child alone. Matthew's vision blurred. Rebecca, Sarah's younger sister. He remembered her, quiet, sweet-tempered, married to a railroad man who died in a rail accident. He'd sent money once or twice, but they'd never visited. And then the letters stopped. Rebecca Sullivan Brennan, Eleanor said quietly. Your wife's maiden name? Then her married name? Lily's mother. Matthew looked up. Where's Rebecca now? Dead, I asked around. Cholera outbreak in Omaha, winter of '81. Orphanage took Lily, but their records burned in a fire last year. Matthew felt something crack open in his chest. Lily wasn't some random child left at the depot. She was Sarah's niece. His niece. Why didn't Sarah tell me? Maybe she did. Maybe you forgot. Eleanor's voice was gentle. You were gone a lot those last years. Cattle drives, market trips. Matthew closed the journal, his hands shaking. This proves she's family. No, Eleanor said. It proves your wife knew about her, but without Rebecca's birth certificate, without marriage records, without legal proof, it's just a diary entry. Hearsay. Then what good is it? It's a start, but Parker won't accept it. You need official documents. Matthew stood, paced to the window. Outside, the dark was absolute. No moon, no stars, just wind and cold. So I'm supposed to find records that don't exist? Or you fight them another way? How? Eleanor hesitated. I don't know yet, but I know this. Parker's been doing this for 2 years. 12 homesteads, Matthew. 12 families pushed off their land. And every one of them, the land got resold within a month, always to the same buyer. Frontier Railroad Investment Company. Matthew turned. He's working for the railroad. I can't prove it, but yes, I think so. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Matthew thought of Lily, asleep in the next room. Thought of Sarah, gone 3 years. Thought of 22 years on this land, every fence post driven by his own hands. Parker said 60 days, Matthew said. That gives me till the 1st of May. That's calving season, Eleanor said. I'm always busy. Eleanor stood, gathered her shawl. At the door, she paused. Matthew, that diary entry, it mentions Sarah wanted to bring them here. Maybe she did. Maybe that's why Lily ended up on that train. Matthew didn't answer. Couldn't. After Eleanor left, he sat at the table, staring at the diary. Sarah's handwriting, neat and careful. He opened it to the last entry, dated 2 days before the fire. I dreamed of Lily last night. She was standing in a field of lavender calling for her mother. I woke up crying. Matthew says I'm being foolish, that Rebecca's fine, but I can't shake the feeling something's wrong. Matthew closed the book. His throat felt tight. In the next room, Lily coughed once, then settled back into sleep. Parker didn't know she was blood, but even if Matthew could prove it, Eleanor was right. Without legal documents, it wouldn't matter. The law didn't care about diaries or dreams or dead sisters. It only cared about paper. The next morning, Matthew found Lily exploring the barn. She moved cautiously, still weak from her illness, but her eyes were bright with curiosity. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to an iron hanging on the wall. That's our family brand," Matthew explained, taking down the iron. The design was simple, the letters MS inside a five-pointed star. MS star means the cattle belong to us. Lily ran her finger over the design. "What's it for?" "Branding. When a calf is born, you heat the iron and press it to the hide. Leaves a mark that doesn't fade." "Does it hurt the calf?" "For a moment, but it heals quick." She set the iron down carefully. "Do I get a brand?" The question caught Matthew off guard. "What do you mean?" "You said it means the cattle belong to you. Do I belong to you?" Matthew crouched down, looked her in the eye. "You're family, Lily. Family don't need brands." She considered this, then nodded. "Okay." From the fence line, Matthew heard a voice. "Saw that, Sullivan?" He turned. His neighbor, a rancher named Jenkins, sat on his horse watching them. Jenkins was in his 40s, weathered and quiet, the kind of man who kept to himself. "Saw what?" Matthew asked. "Girl learning your trade, that's family work." Matthew straightened. "She's learning to pull her weight." Jenkins nodded. "Good. Parker's been asking around, no, wants to know if you're really keeping her or just playing church." "Tell him whatever you want. I'll tell him she's working. That's all I saw." He rode off without another word. Lily watched him go. "Who's Parker?" "Nobody you need to worry about." But inside, Matthew was worrying plenty. Jenkins' words meant the gossip was spreading. People were watching, waiting to see what he'd do. He looked at Lily, her copper hair catching the weak February sun, her small fingers still tracing the edges of the branding iron. That morning, she'd found a forgotten treasure on the shelf, a bar of soap wrapped in faded cloth. "Is this special?" she'd asked, holding it up. "It smells like flowers." Matthew had swallowed hard, recognizing Sarah's last batch of lavender soap, the scent that had once filled every corner of their home. "It was your aunt's," he'd managed. "She made it from flowers she grew." Now as Lily moved, that familiar fragrance drifted from her clothes. Not just Sarah's scent anymore, but becoming Lily's too, connecting past to present in a way no document ever could. Matthew picked up the branding iron, felt its weight, cold metal, rough with rust. He'd need to clean it, reforge it before calving season. The thought settled in his mind, not urgent, but present. Spring was coming, and with it, decisions that couldn't be delayed. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Can I help with the cows when the babies come?" Matthew looked down at her, this child who'd been thrown away, who hummed Sarah's lullaby without knowing why, who asked questions that cut straight to the bone. "Yes," he said, "you can help." Behind them, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of thawing earth and distant rain. Winter wasn't done yet, but it was loosening its grip. Matthew just hoped 60 days would be enough. 3 days later, Matthew rode into town with Lily bundled in the wagon beside him. The girl had been asking questions about the ranch, about Sarah, about why she couldn't remember coming here before. Matthew didn't have good answers, so he kept his responses short and focused on what needed doing. Dr. Harrison's office sat above the apothecary, a narrow staircase leading up from the street. The smell of camphor and iodine hung in the air. Matthew knocked, heard Harrison's voice. "It's open?" Inside, the office was cramped but orderly. Shelves lined with jars and ledgers, a desk covered in papers, an examining table by the window. Harrison looked up from his work, saw Lily and smiled. "How's my patient?" "Better," Matthew said. "Cough's mostly gone." Harrison gestured for Lily to sit on the table. He checked her breathing, looked at her throat, asked her to stick out her tongue. "You're a strong one," he said. "Most children, that pneumonia would have taken them." Lily swung her legs, watching him with curiosity. "My mama said doctors smell like medicine." Harrison chuckled. "Your mama was right." He glanced at Matthew. "Can I speak with you a moment?" "Alone?" Matthew nodded. "Lily, wait here. Don't touch anything." They stepped into the back room where Harrison kept his records. Filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled by year. Harrison pulled open the one marked 1875, 1877, flipped through folders. "After Eleanor told me about the diary," Harrison said, "I started thinking. I delivered babies in Omaha for 2 years, 74 through 76. Worked at the clinic on Porter Street. He pulled out a folder, opened it. Kept every record. Matthew's pulse quickened. You delivered Lily? Not sure yet. Let me check. Harrison ran his finger down a list of names, dates, notes written in tight script. He stopped. Here, Lily Brennan, born May 14, 1876. Mother, Rebecca Sullivan Brennan. Clubfoot surgery, successful. Discharged June 2nd. Matthew exhaled. That's her. Harrison nodded slowly. It's proof she existed. Proof Rebecca was Sarah's sister. Same maiden name. He closed the folder. But I'll need a judge's permission to present this in court. Medical records are confidential unless subpoenaed. Can you get permission? Judge Morrison comes through on circuit. Won't be back till late April. That's 2 months from now. I know. Harrison's face was grim. Question is, can you hold off Parker that long? Matthew didn't answer right away. He thought of the decree Parker had read at the town meeting, the 60-day countdown. The way the man had smiled when he said Matthew's name. I'll have to. Harrison handed him the folder. Take this. Make a copy if you can. I'll testify when the time comes, but you need to be ready. Matthew tucked the folder inside his coat. Why are you helping me, Doc? Harrison looked at him, his eyes tired. Because I delivered that child. I held her when she was an hour old, and I told Rebecca she'd be fine. I'll be damned if I let some bureaucrat steal her family a second time. Back at the ranch, Matthew set Lily to learning chores. She was small but steady, and she listened when he explained things. He showed her how to gather eggs from the hen house, how to scatter grain for the chickens, how to check the water trough for ice. She worked without complaint, her hands red from the cold, her breath white in the morning air. In the evening, she sat in Sarah's rocking chair by the fire, looking through Sarah's Bible or listening as Matthew read aloud from it. Sometimes she hummed that lullaby, unaware of how it made Matthew's heart clench. One afternoon, as they finished the chores, Lily asked, "Why is that iron so rusty?" She pointed to the branding iron which Matthew had returned to its place in the corner of the barn. Haven't used it since last year. When will we use it again? Soon. Calving season starts in April. First calves usually early May. She nodded, serious. I'll practice holding it. Something about her determination made Matthew smile. You do that. That night, a storm blew in, fierce and sudden. Snow piled against the windows. The wind howled through the rafters. Lily sat close to the fire, wrapped in a quilt, while Matthew checked the doors and windows. Will the animals be okay? She asked. They're in the barn. They'll be fine. She was quiet a moment. Then, did my mama die? The question stopped Matthew cold. He sat down across from her, trying to find the right words. Yes, child, I believe she did. In Omaha some years back. Lily nodded as if confirming something she already knew. I thought so. I remember being sick, and then different people taking care of me. The orphanage? I think so. She looked into the fire. Then they put me on the train, said I was going to a new home. Do you remember who put you on the train? She shook her head. A lady. She pinned the note to me and said someone would want me there, but I don't think she believed it. Matthew's chest tightened. Well, she was wrong about that part. Lily looked up at him, her eyes questioning. You want me? I do. Because I'm your family? Matthew thought of the diary, of the medical records, of the 60 days ticking away. But mostly he thought of this small person sitting before him, asking if she mattered. Yes, he said, because you're family. She smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her, and something in the room seemed to shift, as if the storm outside had somehow cleared the air between them. The next morning, Matthew found a notice nailed to the courthouse door, black ink on white paper, official county seal at the top. Abandonment decree, notice of forfeiture review. His name was at the top of the list. Matthew Sullivan, Homestead Parcel 47B. Charges, no documented family continuity per Territorial Code 412. 60-day notice expires May 1st, 1883. Failure to provide blood relation or legal adoption papers results in homestead forfeiture and county resale. Below his name were two others, widows he knew from church. People gathered behind him as he read. Matthew heard boots on the boardwalk, the scrape of a match, low murmurs. Then Parker's voice, smooth and loud. "Afternoon, Sullivan." Matthew turned. Parker stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by two men Matthew didn't recognize. Railroad types by the look of their coats. "Didn't think you'd post it public," Matthew said. Parker smiled. "Transparency is important. People got a right to know which homesteads are under review. That girl's my wife's niece. Then prove it." Parker descended the steps, stopped 3 feet from Matthew. "Birth records, marriage certificates, legal documentation, that's all the law requires." Matthew's jaw clenched. "I'm working on it." "You've got till May 1st. After that, the land goes to auction." Sheriff Davis stepped out of the crowd. He was a lean man, early 50s, with a gray mustache and eyes that missed nothing. "Parker, this seem right to you? Man works land for 22 years. Suddenly, he's got to prove his own family?" Parker's smile never wavered. "I don't make the law, Sheriff. I enforce it. Convenient how it's always widowers and spinsters you're enforcing it on. Those are the cases that require review." Parker turned back to Matthew. "Mr. Sullivan, if you'd like to avoid the public process, I'm authorized to negotiate. Sign the land over now. I'll drop the case. You'd even get a settlement. $500. Matthew's fists clenched. $500 for land worth 10 times that. "I ain't signing nothing." Parker shrugged. "Your choice, but the clock's ticking." He walked past Matthew, his boots loud on the boardwalk. The crowd dispersed slowly. Sheriff Davis stayed, arms folded. "Matthew, you need legal help. Need documents I don't have. Then get them, or find another way." Davis's voice dropped. "I don't trust Parker. Never have. But my hands are tied unless I got proof he's breaking the law." Matthew nodded, climbed back on his wagon where Lily waited. She'd been watching the entire exchange, her face solemn. "Are we in trouble, Lana?" she asked as they drove away. Matthew looked down at her. The truth was yes, they were in trouble. Deep trouble. But he said, "Nothing we can't handle." That night, Eleanor burst into Matthew's cabin without knocking. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She held a folded paper. "Matthew, you need to see this." He took the paper. It was a copy of the decree from the courthouse door, but at the bottom, below the county seal, was a signature line. "Matthew Sullivan acknowledging notice and waiving contestation rights." Below it, a signature, his name in handwriting that looked almost right. Matthew stared. "I never signed this." "I know, this is forged, but it's notarized. County seal, witness signature, everything legal." Matthew's vision blurred with rage. "He forged my signature. And if it's notarized, a judge might accept it, might say you had your chance to contest and chose not to." Matthew sat down hard, the paper crumpling in his fist. Lily was asleep in the next room. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. "How many others?" he asked quietly. "What? How many other people did he do this to?" Eleanor hesitated. "I don't know, but I can find out." Matthew looked at the charred homestead certificate on the mantel. Sarah had died trying to save it from the fire. He'd carried her out of the flames, but she'd run back in for that paper. Proof of their life together. Proof they'd built something that mattered. And now Parker was trying to steal it with a forged signature. From the bedroom, Lily stirred. Matthew heard the bed frame creak, then her small voice. "Uncle Matthew, are we leaving?" The words stopped him cold. Uncle. She'd started calling him that last week. Hesitant at first, then more certain. He walked to the doorway. Lily sat up in bed, her copper hair tangled, her eyes wide in the dim light. "No," Matthew said, "we're not leaving." "I heard shouting." "That was Miss Eleanor. She's just worried is all." Lily looked past him to where Eleanor stood by the fire. "Are you worried too?" Matthew crouched by the bed. "A little, but worrying don't solve problems. Working does." "What kind of work?" "The kind that proves you belong here." Lily considered this. "Do I belong here?" Matthew felt something crack in his chest. Not break, but crack like ice on a spring river, letting the current through. "Yes," he said, "you belong here." Lily lay back down. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Matthew returned to the main room. Eleanor was staring at the forged decree, her face hard. "If the law is broken," Matthew said quietly, "then we fix it the old way." "What's the old way?" Witnesses, truth, people standing up when it counts. Eleanor looked at him. You think people will stand up for you? I think some will, and that might be enough. Eleanor folded the decree carefully. I'll start asking around. See who else Parker did this to. If we can prove a pattern, Sheriff Davis might listen. Maybe. After Eleanor left, Matthew stood at the window, staring into the darkness that enveloped the ranch. The land he'd worked for 22 years lay beyond the glass, a legacy built with his hands and Sarah's, now threatened by a signature that wasn't his. He touched the scar on his left hand, a reminder of the fire that took Sarah. The same fire she'd run back into, trying to save the homestead certificate that now sat charred but legible on the mantel. Matthew and Sarah Sullivan, 160 acres, granted 1861. From Lily's room came the soft sound of breathing, occasionally punctuated by that haunting lullaby, Sarah's lullaby, that the girl somehow knew by heart. Matthew's gaze shifted to the rusty branding iron he'd brought in from the barn. An idea began to form, something his father had taught him long ago. If Parker wanted proof of family, Matthew would give him proof the old way. Not with papers that could be forged, but with work that couldn't be denied. The law has paper, he whispered to himself. We have iron. Parker had 60 days to enforce his decree. Matthew had 60 days to prove him wrong. He turned down the lamp and settled into Sarah's rocking chair, the plan solidifying in his mind. In the hearth, the fire shifted, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney like stars fleeing into the night. I won't let him take it, Sarah, he promised the darkness. Not your home, not your niece. And somewhere in her dreams, Lily hummed Sarah's song, note for note, as if it had always been hers to sing. Eleanor Fisher's boarding house kitchen smelled of fresh biscuits and lye soap. Matthew arrived before dawn, hat in hand, to find Eleanor already awake and 3 townswomen sitting at her table with coffee cups. He recognized them. Mrs. Brenner, whose husband had died in a mining accident, Mrs. Yates, a spinster who ran the schoolhouse, and young Sarah Jenkins, the neighbor's daughter. Eleanor gestured to an empty chair. Sit, we've been talking. Matthew sat. The women watched him with expressions he couldn't quite read. Determination, maybe, or quiet anger. After you left last night, Eleanor said, I started thinking. Parker's been doing this for 2 years. 12 homesteads, all widows or widowers, all resold within a month. She pushed a piece of paper across the table. I made a list. Matthew scanned the names. Some he knew, others were strangers. My husband's name is on that list, Mrs. Branner said quietly. Lost our claim in '79. Parker said we didn't have family continuity. I had 3 children, Matthew. 3. But they were all under 10, and he said that didn't count. Needed adults. That's a damn lie, Matthew said. It's the law, or how he interprets it. Mrs. Yates leaned forward. We can't prove he forged anything on our cases. Too much time's passed. But we can testify about yours. Matthew frowned. Testify to what? That Lily lives with you, that she works your ranch, that she's part of your household. Eleanor tapped the table. It's not blood proof, but it shows intent. Judges respect community vouching. Won't hold up in court without documentation. Maybe not, Eleanor said, but it'll show Parker we're watching, that we're not afraid of him. Matthew looked at the women, tired eyes, worn hands, faces that had seen loss and kept going. You'd risk that, standing up against him? Mrs. Brenner's voice was still. He took my land, Matthew. I got nothing left to lose. Eleanor pulled out a stack of papers already written in careful script. Affidavits, witness statements. She handed one to each woman. Says you've observed Lily Sullivan at Matthew's ranch, participating in family labor, residing as kin. Mrs. Yates signed without hesitation. So did Sarah Jenkins. Mrs. Brenner paused, pen hovering, then wrote her name in firm strokes. Eleanor looked at Matthew. I'll get more. 20, 30 if I can. Won't win your case, but it'll make Parker sweat. Matthew's throat felt tight. Why are you doing this? Because my Thomas believed in community, Eleanor said quietly. And because if we don't stand up now, we'll all lose our land eventually, one by one until there's nothing left but railroad money and Parker's smile. Outside, the first light touched the eastern hills. Matthew rode home through cold air that smelled of thawing mud and distant rain. Spring was coming, slow but certain. At the ranch, he found Lily in the barn, trying to lift a hay bale twice her size. She dragged it halfway across the floor before giving up. "What are you doing?" Matthew asked. "Helping?" She wiped her hands on her dress. "You said family pulls their weight." Matthew crouched beside the bale, showed her how to cut the twine and scatter the hay by armfuls instead. She watched, then copied his movements, her small hands working steadily. "Uncle Matthew, what's branding for?" He glanced at the iron still leaning in the corner. "Told you, it marks the cattle." "But why?" "So everyone knows they're ours. So if they wander, people bring them back. So if someone tries to steal them, we got proof." Lily tilted her head. "Do people steal cows?" "Sometimes." "Do people steal land?" The question hit harder than it should have. Matthew straightened, brushed hay from his pants. "They try me. Is someone trying to steal ours?" Matthew looked at her, this 7-year-old girl with Sarah's eyes and Rebecca's copper hair, standing in a barn that might not be his in 6 weeks. "Yes," he said, "but I'm not letting them." "How do you stop them?" "By showing them we're family." "By doing the work?" "By proving it in front of witnesses." Lily nodded slowly like she was working through a puzzle. "When do the baby cows come?" "Calving starts in April. First one's usually early May." "Can I help?" Matthew hesitated. Calving was hard work. Bloody, exhausting, sometimes heartbreaking when a calf didn't make it. But he'd promised. "Yes, you can help." That afternoon, they worked side by side, feeding chickens, checking fence posts, hauling water from the creek. The ice was breaking up, chunks floating downstream. The ground beneath their boots was wet, no longer frozen solid. Matthew heard thunder in the distance, looked west, saw dark clouds building. Spring storms coming early. "We should head in," he said. Lily looked at the sky. "Is it going to rain?" "Likely." "Good, the garden needs it." Matthew paused. "What garden?" "The one Aunt Sarah planted. You showed me where it was. All the flowers are dead, but they'll come back." Matthew's chest tightened. He had shown her weeks ago, pointed out the small plot near the house where Sarah used to grow lavender and sage. He hadn't expected Lily to remember or to care. "Yes," he said quietly. "They'll come back." As they walked to the cabin, the first drops began to fall. Cold rain that smelled of earth and new grass. By the time they reached the door, it was pouring. Inside, Matthew built up the fire while Lily dried her hair with a towel. The rain drummed on the tin roof, steady and relentless. Matthew thought of Eleanor and the women signing affidavits, thought of Doc Harrison's medical records, locked in a cabinet and waiting for a judge, thought of the branding iron in the barn, rusted but still whole. He had 3 weeks till May 1st. 3 weeks to turn witness statements and old records into something a court would accept. 3 weeks to teach Lily how to brand a calf in front of a town that would decide if she belonged. The rain fell harder. Matthew closed his eyes, listened to the rhythm. Outside, the creek was rising. Matthew needed supplies, flour, salt, lamp oil, and the general store was the only place to get them. He brought Lily along, partly because Eleanor was busy with witness gathering, partly because he wanted the town to see her, wanted them to know she wasn't hiding. The store smelled of pickle brine and tobacco. The storekeeper, a man named Hobbs, nodded as Matthew entered. His wife was behind the counter, weighing out sugar for another customer. Lily wandered to the candy jars while Matthew gathered what he needed. Mrs. Hobbs watched the girl, then smiled. "She's got your wife's eyes, Matthew. Same color." "Sarah's sister's child," Matthew said quietly. "I can see it." She measured sugar into a paper bag. "The hair, too. That copper color runs in families." Matthew paid for the supplies, counting out coins. As he reached for the flour sack, the door banged open. Maxwell Parker walked in, his boots loud on the wood floor. The store went quiet. Parker smiled, tipped his hat to Mrs. Hobbs. "Morning, everyone." His gaze landed on Matthew. "Sullivan, still wasting money on supplies?" Matthew picked up the flour sack. "Still got a roof to store them under." "For now." Parker leaned against the counter, casual. "You know, I've been reviewing your case. Checked the county records twice. No adoption papers filed. No birth certificates linking that girl to your wife's family. Nothing. Working on it. Working on what? Making up documents? Parker's voice rose just enough for everyone in the store to hear. First, you forged signatures to waive contestation rights. Now you're stalling. Matthew's jaw clenched. I never signed that paper. Then prove it. Mrs. Hobbs cleared her throat. Mr. Parker, I've seen Matthew's signature. He signs the store ledger every time he buys on credit. That decree signature don't look the same to me. Parker's smile tightened. You an expert on handwriting, Mrs. Hobbs? No, but I got eyes. Hobbs stepped forward, opened the store ledger, flipped to Matthew's account. Here, March 2nd, March 9th. And here's the decree copy Eleanor showed me. He set them side by side. Don't match. Parker glanced at the ledger. His expression unchanging. Witnesses won't save you, Sullivan. Only paper does. He turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. The store stayed quiet for a moment. Then Mrs. Hobbs said softly, We believe you, Matthew. Matthew nodded, his throat tight. He gathered his supplies and left, Lily following close behind. 2 days later, Sheriff Davis sent word. Come to my office. Matthew arrived at noon. The sheriff's office was small, cluttered with wanted posters and filing cabinets. Davis sat behind his desk, a ledger open in front of him. Sit, Davis said. Matthew sat. What's this about? Been doing some digging. You said Parker forged your signature. So I started looking at his other cases. 12 homesteads in 2 years. All pushed through fast, too fast. Davis turned the ledger around. Found this in the courthouse records room. Parker's private ledger. He keeps it locked in his office safe, but the county clerk has a key. Matthew leaned forward. The ledger was filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. He recognized some. Thomas Fisher, Eleanor's husband, Benjamin Hollis, Samuel Turner. Next to each name was a notation. FRI Company, $500. What's FRI Co., Matthew asked. Frontier Railroad Investment Company. They've been buying up homesteads along the proposed rail corridor. Matthew's blood turned cold. Parker's been feeding them land. County auctions the land for $200. Railroad buys it for $500. Parker takes the gap. Davis closed the ledger. It's fraud, Matthew, clear as day. Can you arrest him? I need more than this. Need witness testimony. Need proof the signatures are forged. Need a judge's order. Davis leaned back. But I can build a case. If you prove that girl's your family. Publicly. Publicly how? Territorial law says family continuity includes trade participation. If a child works a homestead's primary trade, branding cattle, milling grain, whatever, and it's witnessed by community members, that counts as family labor. Davis tapped the desk. You got calving season starting soon. First calf's due late April. Brand it. Public ceremony. Invite witnesses. Have the girl hold the iron. Matthew frowned. She's 7 years old. I know, but if she can do it, if she can prove she's learning your trade, that's family continuity under the law. Combine that with Harrison's medical records, Eleanor's affidavits, and this. He tapped the ledger. And I can arrest Parker for fraud. Can you stop the May 1st deadline? Davis shook his head. Not without a judge's order. But if you make it to May 1st and prove family publicly, I can file charges the same day. Won't save your land retroactively, but it'll stop him from taking anyone else's. Matthew sat back, his mind racing. You're saying the whole town needs to watch. That's exactly what I'm saying. Make it so public Parker can't challenge it. Make it so obvious even a territorial judge can't ignore it. Matthew thought of Lily, small hands gripping the branding iron, learning to hold it steady. Thought of the town gathered at his ranch, watching a 7-year-old girl burn a mark into a calf's hide. She can do it, Matthew said quietly. You sure? I'll teach her. Davis nodded. Then we got a shot. He stood, offered his hand. I don't like men who steal from widows and orphans, Matthew. Let's take him down. Matthew shook his hand, felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest. That evening, Dr. Harrison arrived at the ranch with a folder under his arm. Heard from the sheriff about the plan, he said, and I'm in. Harrison set the folder on the table. Got Lily's birth record, surgery notes, Everything. Judge Morrison arrives April 28th. I'll request permission to present medical evidence that day. That's 3 days before the deadline. I know, cutting it close, but if the sheriff arrests Parker on May 1st, the judge will have to review the case. Your ceremony gives him reason to pause the forfeiture. Matthew opened the folder, saw the neat handwriting. Lily Brennan, born May 14th, 1876. Mother Rebecca Sullivan Brennan. Proof, real, documented proof. Why are you risking this, Doc? You could lose your license if Parker retaliates. Harrison's face was grim. Because I delivered that child. I held her when she was an hour old. I told her mother she'd be fine. He paused. I'll be damned if some county clerk steals her family twice. After Harrison left, Matthew sat at the table, staring at the birth record. Outside, the night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like seeds. He heard Lily moving in the next room, then her voice. Uncle Matthew, can I ask you something? Come here. She patted out in her nightdress, bare feet on the cold floor. Matthew pulled her onto his lap. What is it? When I brand the calf, will it hurt the calf? For a moment, but it heals. Will people be watching? Yes. Wait. Matthew looked at her, this child who'd been thrown away and found, who carried Sarah's blood in Rebecca's name. Because sometimes people need to see the truth to believe it. Lily nodded, her small face serious. I won't let my hands shake. I know you won't. She rested her head against his chest, and Matthew felt the weight of her trust. Absolute, unearned, terrifying. Outside, a coyote howled. The stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in town, Parker was likely planning his next move. But Matthew had a plan too. May 1st was coming, and when it did, the whole territory would see what family looked like when it was earned in fire and witnessed in daylight. April was a month of preparation. Matthew cleaned the barn, fixed the corral, made sure everything was ready for calving season. Lily followed him everywhere, learning each task with serious attention. He took the branding iron to Gregory, the blacksmith, who cleaned off the rust and reforged the metal until the MS star gleamed. Heard about what you're planning, Gregory said as he worked the bellows. The forge glowed orange-red, heat radiating in waves. Bold move. Only move I got. Gregory nodded, understanding. He'd come from Pennsylvania, lost everything when the banks collapsed in '73. Knew what it meant to fight for what was yours. I'll be there, he said, hammering the hot metal. Whole town will. At home, Matthew cut a wooden practice iron, exact weight and shape of the real thing. He showed Lily how to hold it, where to place her thumb, how to keep her wrist steady as she pressed down. Count to 3, he instructed. Not too fast, not too slow. Lily practiced daily, her small face set in concentration. Matthew watched her improve, saw the growing steadiness in her hands, the confidence in her movements. The first pregnant cow went into labor on April 25th. Matthew stayed with her through the night, Lily beside him, wrapped in a blanket against the cold. He explained each stage, the water breaking, the hooves appearing, the head, the shoulders. Sometimes you have to help them, he said, demonstrating how to pull gently when the cow strained. Just enough to guide, not enough to force. The calf arrived just before dawn, wet and wobbling. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder as the mother cow licked her newborn clean. Can we brand him now? She asked. Not yet. He needs to grow a bit, and we want to wait for May 1st when the judge is here. Lily nodded, understanding the plan now. The next day, Eleanor came with news. I've got 32 signatures, she said, showing Matthew the stack of affidavits. Everyone from Mrs. Hobbs to the minister's wife. Even some men signed. Jenkins, Gregory, Wilson from the feed store. Matthew looked at the names, felt something tighten in his chest. Thank you. No need. This is for all of us. She glanced at the newborn calf in the corral. Is that the one? Yes. Bull calf, strong legs, good for the ceremony. Eleanor smiled. Perfect. April 28th arrived cold and wrong. The sky hung low and gray, and by noon snow was falling. Thick, wet flakes that shouldn't exist this late in spring. Matthew stood on the porch watching the storm build, feeling the temperature drop. A blizzard. 3 days before May 1st, he heard wagons on the road, neighbors heading somewhere in a hurry. The Jenkins family passed first, their wagon loaded with supplies. Matthew raised his hand, expecting a wave back. They looked straight ahead, didn't slow down. 10 minutes later, the Johnsons came through. Same thing, eyes forward, no acknowledgement. Then the Brenners, Mrs. Brenner, who'd signed Eleanor's affidavit, sat rigid in the wagon seat. Her son drove. When they passed Matthew's fence line, the boy turned his head away. Matthew felt something cold settle in his gut. Lily came out wrapped in Sarah's old shawl. Why won't they wave? Don't know. Are they mad at us? Matthew looked down at her, snow catching in her copper hair. They're scared of losing their own land if they side with me. Lily watched the wagons disappear into the white. That's not fair. No, Matthew said, it's not. By evening, the snow was a foot deep and still coming. Matthew built up the fire, made stew, tried not to think about the fact that no one had stopped. In the old days, before Parker, before the decrees, neighbors sheltered together during storms, shared food, shared warmth, looked out for each other. Not anymore. Now they were all alone, watching their own backs, terrified the county would come for them next. Matthew stood at the window, his breath fogging the glass. Behind him, Lily sat by the fire, humming Sarah's lullaby. Uncle Matthew, she said quietly, what if we can't do it? Can't do what? The branding. What if I mess up? Matthew turned. Lily looked small in the firelight, her face shadowed with worry. He crossed the room, crouched beside her chair. You won't mess up. But what if my hand shakes? What if I drop the iron? Then I'll steady your hand and we'll do it together. Will people laugh? Matthew's throat tightened. No one's going to laugh. Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why do we have to prove we're family? Can't people just see it? Matthew didn't have a good answer. He pulled her into a hug, felt her small body trembling. Some people see what they want to see, he said quietly. Others see what's true. We just got to make sure enough people see the truth. Outside, the wind howled. Snow piled against the windows. The cabin felt small and fragile, like it might blow away. Matthew held Lily until she stopped shaking, until her breathing evened out. Then he carried her to bed, tucked her in, and sat beside her until she fell asleep. When he returned to the main room, he looked at the branding iron leaning against the wall. Tomorrow he'd make sure the newborn calf was healthy, make sure Lily practiced one more time. Tomorrow, if the storm passed. April 29th dawned clear and bitter cold. The storm had blown through, leaving the world white and silent. Matthew went to check on the livestock. The barn was warm with animal heat, the new calf strong and alert beside his mother. Later, Sheriff Davis rode out, his horse struggling through the deep snow. Thought you should know, he said, stamping snow from his boots on the porch. Parker's been busy, called an emergency town meeting yesterday during the storm. Told everyone you were planning to defraud the county with a fake branding ceremony. Matthew's jaw tightened. That why no one stopped to help? Partly. He also warned that anyone caught supporting you would have their own land claims reviewed. He can't do that. He's got people scared enough to believe he can. Davis looked grim. Judge Morrison arrived this morning. Parker's already been to see him, tried to get him to sign off on your forfeiture early. What did the judge say? He's reviewing the case. Said he'd wait till May 1st as required, but I don't like how Parker got to him first. Matthew nodded, absorbing the bad news. Did Harrison see the judge yet? About the medical records? Yes. Morrison said he'll consider them, but he didn't seem impressed. Said diary entries and medical records aren't the same as legal adoption papers. Matthew felt the walls closing in. So it all comes down to the ceremony. I'm afraid so. Davis looked at Lily, who was listening from the doorway. How's our young brander doing? Lily stepped forward, standing straighter. I'm ready, Sheriff. Davis smiled. Good girl, you show them all on May 1st. After Davis left, Matthew checked the branding iron once more, making sure the metal was clean, the handle secure. Lily practiced with the wooden model, her movements becoming smooth with repetition. When I press the iron, she recited, I count to 3. Not too fast, not too slow. And you say, Mess star, this is my family's mark. Good. That evening, Eleanor arrived with more bad news. Parker had convinced 6 of her 32 witnesses to retract their statements. Fear of reprisal, fear of losing their own land. But the others are still with us, she insisted, 26 strong, and I've sent word to everyone about the ceremony. May 1st, your ranch, noon sharp. Matthew nodded, thankful but worried. Will they come? After the storm? After Parker's threats? Some will. Eleanor's voice was firm. The ones with courage. The ones who remember what community means. April 30th was a day of waiting. Matthew went about his chores, checking the cattle, feeding the horses, chopping wood. Lily followed, asking fewer questions than usual, a seriousness about her that hadn't been there before. Just before sunset, they walked together to the small hill behind the house where Sarah was buried. A simple wooden cross marked the spot, nearly hidden now by the tall grass. Lily knelt beside the grave, placed a handful of early spring wildflowers she'd collected. Aunt Sarah would have liked thee, she said. Matthew nodded, not trusting his voice. Lily seemed so certain about a woman she'd never met. Or had she? Had Sarah managed to see her niece before the fire? Had she kept that secret from him? He'd never know now. Tomorrow's the day, Lily said, standing up. Are you scared, Uncle Matthew? The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on preparing her, he hadn't examined his own feelings. A little, he admitted, not of the branding, of what comes after. If we lose the ranch? Yes. Lily took his hand, her small fingers fitting inside his calloused palm. We won't lose it. I'll do it right. I promise. Matthew squeezed her hand gently. I know you will. They stood together as the light faded, watching the sunset paint the snow-covered fields gold, then pink, then deep purple. This is our home, Lily said quietly, no matter what papers say. Matthew nodded. Yes, it is. Night brought no rest to the Sullivan homestead. Each time Matthew rose to stoke the fire, he found himself pausing at Lily's doorway, watching her fitful sleep. Even in dreams, her hands mimicked the branding motion, the wooden practice iron clutched tight against her chest. Dawn approached with painful slowness. When the first light finally broke, it revealed a sky so intensely blue it seemed to mock yesterday's storm, nature's own judgment on what was to come. It's time, Matthew said, more to himself than to Lily, when she appeared in the doorway, eyes shadowed but determined. They prepared in silence. Matthew donned the clothes he'd saved for funerals and weddings. A white shirt yellowed with age but scrubbed clean. The brown wool vest Sarah had sewn for their 10th anniversary. Boots rubbed to a dull shine with tallow. For Lily, they'd transformed one of Sarah's dresses. Eleanor had spent evenings taking in the waist, shortening the hem, her needle flashing in the lamplight. Now, with her copper hair tied back with Eleanor's blue ribbon, Lily stood before him, no longer just a child found in a freight car, but a Sullivan preparing to claim her birthright through fire and iron. I'm not afraid, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Good, Matthew replied, kneeling to meet her eyes. Because they need to see that we know what they don't. What's that? That you've always belonged here. By mid-morning, Matthew heard the first wagons. Not many, just 3 at first. Eleanor, Dr. Harrison, Gregory the blacksmith. They came with solemn faces, determination in their steps. Then more. Mrs. Hobbs from the general store, the minister and his wife, Jenkins, their neighbor, Wilson from the feed store. One by one they arrived, standing in a rough semicircle around the branding area Matthew had prepared. 20 people, then 25. Just before noon, Sheriff Davis rode in, official in his badge and coat. Behind him came Judge Morrison, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. And behind them both, uninvited, but inevitable, Maxwell Parker. Parker wore a suit, his boots polished, his smile fixed. 2 men flanked him, railroad company men by their dress. They stood apart from the others, watching with cold calculation. Matthew nodded to the crowd, felt Lily's hand slip into his, steady and warm. Appreciate you all coming, he said, his voice carrying across the yard. This is a family matter, but territorial law says it needs witnesses. He gestured to Lily. This is Lily, my wife's niece. She's learning the trade, same as any child learns their family's work. Parker's voice cut through the air. This is fraud, Sullivan. That girl's not blood family. Dr. Harrison stepped forward. Actually, she is. He opened his folder, held up a document. Birth record, Lily Brennan, born May 14th, 1876. Mother, Rebecca Sullivan Brennan. I delivered her myself in Omaha. Medical records confirm Rebecca was Sarah Sullivan's sister. The crowd murmured. Parker's face darkened. That don't prove relation to Sullivan. Eleanor stepped forward, holding a stack of papers. And I have 26 affidavits from townspeople who've witnessed Lily living at Matthew's ranch, working his land and participating in family labor. Parker turned to Judge Morrison. This is a circus. Shut it down. Morrison looked uncertain. Sheriff Davis stepped between them. Let them finish. Parker's jaw clenched. You're overstepping, Sheriff. Am I, or am I watching a family prove what you said they couldn't? Matthew moved to the fire pit where Gregory had built a small forge. The branding iron lay heating in the coals, its metal slowly turning red. The newborn calf was secured in the branding chute, calm for now. Lily, Matthew said, are you ready? She nodded, shoulders square beneath Sarah's old dress. I'm ready. The crowd fell silent. Matthew picked up the iron, its handle wrapped in leather to protect from the heat. He carried it to Lily, knelt beside her, and remember what I taught you. Thumb here, finger spread. Press firm and count to 3. Lily nodded. Her hands were steady. Matthew placed the iron in her grip, his hand hovering just below hers, not touching, but ready to support if needed. Together, they approached the calf. The smell of the forge fire hung in the air, mixed with the earthy scent of cattle and spring mud. Lily stood before the calf, the iron glowing orange-red in her small hands. She took a deep breath. The crowd held theirs collectively. Lily lowered the iron to the calf's hide. The smell of burning hair and hide filled the air. The calf bellowed once, then fell silent. MS Star, Lily's voice rang clear. This is my family's mark. She held for 3 seconds, exactly as practiced, then lifted. The brand was perfect. Clean lines. MS in Brighton, a 5-pointed star. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some clapped, others stared, stunned by what they'd witnessed. Parker lunged forward. That's not legal continuity. That's a child doing tricks. Sheriff Davis blocked him, one hand on his chest. Not another step. You can't stop this, Davis. The law, Davis said, voice hard, says family continuity includes trade participation witnessed by community. I count 26 witnesses. You count different. Parker's face went red. I'll have your badge for this. Maybe, but right now you're under arrest. The crowd went silent. Parker stared. On what charge? Fraud, forgery, bribery. Davis pulled a pair of iron cuffs from his belt. Found your ledger, Parker. Frontier Railroad Investment Company. 12 homesteads sold under the table. $500 apiece. Parker stepped back. That's private business. It's fraud. You forged abandonment certificates, including Matthew Sullivan's signature. You took bribes from railroad investors, and you lied to a territorial court. Davis snapped the cuffs on Parker's wrists. You're done. The deputy who had accompanied Parker hesitated, then stepped aside. The crowd watched in silence as Davis led Parker toward a waiting wagon. Parker twisted back, his voice desperate. This won't hold. I'll have lawyers. Save it for the judge. Davis shoved him into the wagon, locked the gate. Matthew stood in the center of the yard, Lily beside him, the branding iron cooling in his hand. Judge Morrison approached, his expression unreadable. Interesting morning, Mr. Sullivan. Yes, Your Honor. I'll need to review all this evidence properly. Morrison glanced at the branded calf, at the medical records in Harrison's hands, at the affidavits Eleanor clutched. But I've seen enough for now to stay any forfeiture proceedings. Your hearing will be this afternoon. 2 o'clock courthouse. Matthew nodded, relief washing through him. We'll be there. The crowd slowly dispersed, some stopping to shake Matthew's hand, others nodding as they left. Lily stood tall beside him, her face flushed with accomplishment. Did I do it right? She asked when they were alone. Matthew knelt down, looked her in the eye. You did perfect. Her smile was like sunrise. 2 o'clock found them at the courthouse, Matthew in his clean coat, Lily in Sarah's dress, still carrying herself with the dignity of the morning ceremony. The courtroom was packed. Everyone from town, it seemed, wanted to witness the outcome. Judge Morrison sat behind his bench, reviewing documents. Sheriff Davis stood to one side, Parker in cuffs beside him. Court is now in session, Morrison announced. Case of Sullivan Homestead claim and criminal charges against Maxwell Parker. The judge reviewed the documents one by one. Dr. Harrison's medical records, Eleanor's affidavits. Sheriff Davis's evidence of fraud. He looked at Parker. You forged this man's signature? Parker said nothing. The judge turned to Matthew. Mr. Sullivan, I've reviewed the witness statements from this morning's ceremony. 26 townspeople observed your niece participating in family trade. That constitutes family continuity under Territorial Code Section 412. Matthew exhaled slowly, felt Lily's hand tighten in his. Furthermore, the judge continued, the medical records presented by Dr. Harrison prove blood relation. Lily Brennan is the daughter of Rebecca Sullivan Brennan, sister to your late wife. He stamped a document. Adoption approved. Your homestead claim is upheld. The gavel fell. Matthew felt Lily press against his side, her small body trembling with relief. Judge Morrison looked at Parker. As for you, 12 counts of fraud, forgery, and accepting bribes. You'll be remanded to territorial prison pending trial. I'm recommending 5 years and full restitution to the 12 families you defrauded. Parker's face went white. Sheriff Davis led him out of the chamber. The judge stood, gathered his papers. Mr. Sullivan, your homestead certificate will be refiled with Lily listed as legal kin and adopted daughter. You're free to go. Matthew nodded, his throat too tight for words. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm. Spring had fully arrived while they were in court. Meadowlarks singing, grass greening, the smell of earth and growth everywhere. Eleanor met them on the courthouse steps. Heard the verdict. Congratulations. Couldn't have done it without you. You're family now, Eleanor said, looking at Lily. Real family, the kind that chooses each other. Lily looked up at Matthew. Can we go home now, Uncle Matthew? The word hit him square in the chest. Home. Not his home or the ranch, just home. Yes, Matthew said, we can go home. They climbed into the wagon, Lily sitting close beside him. As they rode out of town, Matthew saw people waving from porches and storefronts. The same people who'd avoided him during the storm. Now they waved, nodded, called out congratulations. Fear did that to people, made them retreat, made them protect themselves first. But when one person stood up, others found their courage. Matthew thought of Gregory the blacksmith standing witness, thought of Mrs. Hobbs comparing signatures, thought of Eleanor organizing affidavits, and Dr. Harrison risking his license, and Sheriff Davis refusing to back down. One person couldn't fight alone, but a community, a real community, could move mountains. They rode through the gate of the ranch, and Lily jumped down before the wagon fully stopped. She ran to the corral, to the calf they'd branded that morning. It's healing already, she called back. The mark's perfect. Matthew climbed down slowly, his body heavy with exhaustion and relief. He walked to the corral, stood beside Lily. The MS Star brand was clear and clean. The calf nursed from its mother, unbothered. Uncle Matthew, Lily said, can we plant flowers on Aunt Sarah's grave tomorrow? Matthew looked down at her. What kind of flowers? Lavender, like the soap. Matthew's vision blurred. He nodded. Yes, we can do that. Lily smiled, then ran toward the house. Matthew followed more slowly, the weight of the day settling into his bones. Inside, he built up the fire, set water to boil for coffee. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and the faint scent of lavender from Lily's coat still hanging by the door. He sat in Sarah's rocking chair, closed his eyes, and whispered, We made it, Sarah. She's ours now, legal and true. The fire crackled. Outside, the evening birds began their songs, and for the first time in 3 years, Matthew Sullivan felt like he'd finally come home. The next morning, Matthew and Lily rode to the courthouse one final time. Judge Morrison had called them in to witness the official paperwork, the corrected land registry, the adoption certificate, the restitution orders for Parker's victims. The courthouse smelled of ink and old wood. Sheriff Davis stood by the window, arms folded. Dr. Harrison sat in the gallery, hat in his lap. Eleanor arrived moments after Matthew, breathing hard like she'd run all the way. Judge Morrison spread the documents across his desk. Maxwell Parker has been sentenced. 5 years in territorial prison. He'll also pay restitution to 12 families whose homesteads were fraudulently seized. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. My husband's land will be returned to you, Mrs. Fisher. All 12 properties are being restored to their rightful owners or heirs. The judge signed the final document with a flourish. The land registry has been corrected. Mr. Sullivan, your homestead certificate now lists Lily Sullivan as blood kin and legal adopted daughter. He pushed the certificate across the desk. Matthew picked it up, saw his name, Sarah's, and below them in fresh ink, Lily Sullivan, daughter by adoption, May 1st, 1883. It's official, the judge said. She's yours and the land is yours. No one can take either from you now. Matthew's throat was too tight to speak. He nodded once. Lily stood on tiptoe, trying to see the paper. Matthew lifted her so she could read it. Her finger traced her name. That's me. That's you. The judge stood. One more thing, Mrs. Fisher. I understand you gathered witness statements. Eleanor nodded. 26 signatures. That kind of community organizing prevented further fraud. The territorial governor wants to thank you personally. He handed her an envelope. He's also appointed a new land registrar, someone without ties to railroad money. Eleanor took the envelope, her hand shaking. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me, thank yourselves. You stood up when it mattered. Outside, the sun was bright and warm. Spring had settled in fully now. Wildflowers blooming along the courthouse steps, the air soft and smelling of new grass. Eleanor hugged Matthew, then Lily. You did it. You both did it. Couldn't have done it without you, Matthew said. We're family now, Eleanor said simply, the kind that chooses each other. Dr. Harrison shook Matthew's hand. Bring Lily by next week. Want to check her lungs, make sure that pneumonia is fully cleared. We'll do that. Sheriff Davis approached last. Parker's locked up tight, and I'll be keeping an eye on the new registrar. Make sure this don't happen again. Matthew nodded. Appreciate everything you did, Sheriff. Just doing my job. Davis glanced at Lily. Glad I could do it right this time. They rode home in silence, the wagon creaking, the horses moving steady and slow. Lily leaned against Matthew's side, her eyes half closed in the warm sun. Uncle Matthew, she said drowsily, are we really safe now? Matthew thought about it. The law could change again. New men like Parker might come. But for now, this moment, they had won. Yes, he said. We're safe, forever? Forever. She smiled, closed her eyes completely. That afternoon, they walked to Sarah's grave, a small plot on the hill behind the ranch marked with a simple wooden cross. The grave was overgrown with winter-dead grass and weeds. Lily carried a basket with lavender cuttings Eleanor had given them. Matthew brought a spade. They worked side by side, clearing the weeds, turning the soil. The earth was soft and warm, easy to work. Lily planted the lavender carefully, patting the dirt around each stem. Will they grow, she asked. Yes, lavender's hardy, comes back every year. Lily sat back on her heels, looking at the grave. Tell me about Aunt Sarah. Matthew set down the spade. He'd avoided this conversation for weeks, unsure how to talk about a woman Lily had never met but carried in her blood. She was your mother's sister, he began. Older by 4 years, stubborn, kind, made the best bread in the territory. He smiled. She used to sing while she worked. That lullaby you hum, that was hers. Lily looked up. I know that song. You've been humming it since the day I found you. Your mother must have taught you. Lily touched the lavender, her fingers gentle on the leaves. I don't remember her. My mama. That's all right. You were young. Do you think she wanted me? The question hit Matthew hard. He knelt beside Lily, took her hand. Yes, I think she wanted you very much. I think she loved you so much, it scared her. And when she died, I think she made sure you'd end up somewhere safe. Here. Here, Lily leaned against him. I'm glad I came here. So am I. They sat in silence, the sun warm on their backs, the lavender already starting to smell faintly sweet. Below them, the ranch spread out. Barn, corral, fields beginning to green. Matthew's life for 22 years, now theirs together. From the corral came the sound of the branded calf calling for its mother. Lily straightened. Can I go see? Yes. Just stay inside the fence. She ran down the hill, her copper hair catching the light. Matthew watched her go, then turned back to the grave. She's got your eyes, Sarah, he said quietly, and your sister's stubbornness. She's going to be all right. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of earth and growth. Matthew stood, picked up the spade, and walked down the hill. At the corral, Lily had climbed onto the fence, watching the calf nurse. She waved when she saw him. Matthew waved back. That evening, they ate dinner on the porch. Bread, cheese, cold chicken from Eleanor. The sky turned orange and pink, the kind of sunset that made everything look possible. Lily sat on the porch steps, humming Sarah's lullaby. Matthew sat in the rocking chair, whittling a piece of wood, a toy horse for Lily, though he hadn't told her yet. Uncle Matthew, she said, when do the next baby cows come? Few weeks. We'll have 10, maybe 12 calves this season. Can I help with all of them? Everyone. Lily smiled, hugged her knees. Good. The sun dropped below the hills. Stars began to appear, faint at first, then brighter. Matthew set down his knife, looked at the girl on his porch. This child who'd been thrown away and found, who'd learned to hold a branding iron steady, who'd proven in front of 26 witnesses that family wasn't just blood. It was choice, it was work. It was standing in the fire and saying, this is mine and I'm keeping it. Lily, Matthew said, come here a minute. She climbed onto his lap, settled against his chest. Matthew wrapped his arms around her, felt her small heartbeat steady and strong. I want you to know something, he said. You're wanted, you hear me? You're wanted, and you're loved, and you belong here. Lily looked up at him, her eyes, Sarah's eyes, bright in the fading light. I know. Good, don't ever forget it. I won't. They sat together as the stars came out. As the night sounds began, crickets, distant coyotes, the soft lowing of cattle settling down. The air smelled of lavender and warm earth and wood smoke. Matthew thought of the note pinned to Lily's coat that frozen January morning. One word, unwanted. He thought of how wrong that word had been. How a single piece of paper, a single cruel act could be undone by 26 witnesses and a branding iron and a man who refused to walk away. The land was theirs. The family was real. The past was settled. And the future, well, the future was whatever they made it. Matthew closed his eyes, held Lily close, and let the night settle around them like a blanket. They were home. They were family. And that was enough. The next morning, the work began in earnest. Calving season was fully underway, and every day brought new life to the Sullivan Ranch. Matthew showed Lily how to check the pregnant cows, how to recognize the signs of labor, how to assist when needed. She proved to be a natural, her small hands gentle but confident. You got a gift for this, Matthew told her after she helped deliver a difficult birth, a breech calf that might have died without intervention. Lily beamed at the praise. I like helping things be born. Each calf received the MS Star brand once it was strong enough. Matthew let Lily help with each one, though he did the actual branding now that the public ceremony was over. She would hold the calf steady, talk to it in soft tones while Matthew applied the iron. News of Parker's arrest and sentencing spread through the territory. Other landowners came forward with similar stories, and the scandal grew. The territorial governor launched an investigation into land registry practices across 3 counties. 2 more officials were arrested for fraud. The railroad company denied knowledge of Parker's actions and quickly distanced themselves from the scandal. Eleanor Fisher received her land back, 120 acres her husband had worked for 15 years before his death. She sold the boarding house and moved back to the farm, determined to make it profitable again. Matthew and Lily helped her repair fences, clear fields, plant crops. Never thought I'd see this place again, Eleanor said, standing in the doorway of her farmhouse. Thomas would be pleased. He'd be proud of you, Matthew told her. You didn't give up. Neither did you. The community changed after Parker's arrest. People who had kept to themselves, afraid of drawing attention, began to gather again. Sunday socials after church, barn raisings, harvest festivals. The connections that had frayed under fear began to mend. Matthew found himself more involved than before. He'd always been a solitary man, especially after Sarah's death. But now he had Lily, and Lily needed more than just him. She needed other children, needed the wider circle that makes a life complete. So Matthew joined the school board, helped build a new roof for the church, attended town meetings and spoke his mind. And slowly he began to realize that he needed these things too, that his life had grown too small, too isolated. One warm day in late May, Sheriff Davis rode out to the ranch. Matthew was mending a saddle on the porch, Lily at school in town. Got news, Davis said, declining Matthew's offer of coffee. Judge Morrison asked me to tell you. They found Rebecca's marriage certificate in the county records over in Omaha. Confirms everything, that she was Sarah's sister, that she married James Brennan, that Lily is their child. Matthew set down his work. Thought those records were lost. Not lost, hidden. Parker had connections in the Omaha courthouse too. Seems he was planning this for a while, targeting specific homesteads along the rail line. Matthew felt a cold anger settle in his chest. How many more were there? At least 30 across 3 territories. The governor's making it right, though. Everyone gets their land back. After Davis left, Matthew sat on the porch, turning this news over in his mind. Parker had specifically targeted him, had deliberately hidden records that would have proven Lily's connection, had almost succeeded in stealing everything Matthew had built. But why? The railroad money explained part of it, but not the personal nature of the attack. There was something Matthew was missing. That evening, when Lily returned from school, Matthew asked her about her earliest memories of the orphanage. I remember a man who came to see me, she said, frowning with the effort of recollection. Not often, maybe 3 times. He wore a nice coat and had a watch on a chain. Matthew stilled. Did he tell you his name? Lily shook her head. No, but the ladies at the orphanage called him Mr. Parker. The pieces fell into place. Maxwell Parker had known about Lily all along, had perhaps even arranged her placement on that train, that note pinned to her coat, not to help her find family, but to create a trap, to engineer the very situation he then used to try to take Matthew's land. But why? What had Matthew ever done to him? The next morning, Sheriff Davis arrived with a letter in hand, his expression grave. From Parker, he said. Prison guards said he's been writing it since the day he was locked up. Matthew unfolded the yellowed paper, the handwriting tight and controlled, despite the rage it contained. Sullivan, you don't remember me, but I remember you. 1863, Chattanooga. You were a Union scout. I was a Confederate lieutenant. You led a raid that killed my brother and took my family's land. For 20 years, I've watched you prosper while my family name died with Thomas. I traced your wife's sister to Omaha, found her daughter in that orphanage. I arranged everything, the train, the note, the discovery. Should have been more careful who you made enemies with. Even now, I don't regret it. Miss Parker. Matthew's hands went cold. Memories flooded back. A night raid, a farmhouse, gunfire in the darkness. A young officer falling, another fleeing into the woods. So many faces from those years, all blurred by smoke and time. My God, he whispered. He used Lily. Planned it all. War broke something in him, Davis said, taking back the letter. Seen it before. Men who can't let go, who build their whole lives around getting even. Matthew suddenly understood the depth of Parker's hatred, how he'd spent years tracking down Sarah's family, waiting for the perfect moment, using an innocent child as his weapon. He found Rebecca, Matthew said, the realization hitting him. He might have even... Don't go there, Davis warned. Whatever Parker did or didn't do to Lily's mother, it's done. Focus on what matters now. Matthew looked out the window where Lily was feeding chickens, laughing as they pecked around her feet. Parker had tried to use her to destroy him, but instead had delivered the one thing that could save him, the family he thought he'd lost. Add it to his file, Matthew said finally, but tell the judge I don't want additional charges. Man's already in a prison of his own making. Davis raised an eyebrow. That's mighty forgiving. Not forgiveness, Matthew corrected, just not letting him have any more power over us. We've got better things to build than grudges. After Davis left, Matthew sat at the table, thinking about how the past reached into the present, how old wounds festered if you let them, how hatred could consume a man until there was nothing left but the desire to hurt others. He looked out the window at Lily, playing in the yard with a neighbor's child. She was laughing, her face tilted to the sun, no shadow of her early hardships visible in her joy. That evening, Matthew took out paper and pen and wrote a letter to the prison warden. Tell Parker I remember Chattanooga now. Tell him I'm sorry about his brother. Tell him the war is over and we both lost things we can't get back. Tell him I forgive him and I hope someday he can forgive too. He didn't expect an answer, and none came. But writing the letter lifted something from Matthew's shoulders, a weight he hadn't known he was carrying. Summer came in full, the days long and warm. The ranch prospered, the cattle grew fat on abundant grass. The vegetable garden Lily had planted beside Sarah's lavender flourished under her careful tending. Lily thrived too. She did well in school, made friends, grew an inch taller. The pneumonia that had nearly killed her left no lasting effects. She was strong, healthy, full of life. One night in July, a traveling photographer came to town. He set up his equipment in the churchyard and offered family portraits for $2 each. Eleanor insisted on paying for Matthew and Lily to have their picture taken. "Every family needs a portrait," she said firmly. So they sat, Matthew in his good shirt, Lily in a new dress Eleanor had helped her make. They were stiff at first, uncomfortable under the photographer's scrutiny. Then Lily whispered something that made Matthew smile, and the photographer captured that moment. The two of them connected by shared humor, by affection, by choice. When the photograph was developed, Matthew had it framed and hung it above the mantel, next to Sarah's Bible and the now restored homestead certificate. The three things that defined his life: faith, land, family. August brought the county fair. Lily entered her lavender sachets in the children's handicraft competition and won a blue ribbon. Matthew's 2-year-old bull took second place in its category. They celebrated with lemonade and spun sugar, walking the fairgrounds until dusk. As they drove home, Lily clutching her ribbon, she asked, "Uncle Matthew, do you think my mama and Aunt Sarah can see us from heaven?" Matthew considered the question carefully. His faith was private, not something he talked about easily, but this mattered to Lily. "Yes," he said finally. "I think they can. I think they're proud of you." "And of you too?" Matthew swallowed hard. "I hope so." "I know so," Lily said with the certainty of childhood. "You saved me. You fought for me. Of course they're proud." Matthew couldn't answer, his throat too tight with emotion. He simply nodded and drove on toward home, the stars emerging above them, the road familiar beneath the wagon wheels. Fall came, the aspens turning gold, the nights growing cooler. Lily started a new year of school, now in the third reader. Matthew sold his cattle at good prices, laid in supplies for winter, repaired the barn roof. In October, Judge Morrison stopped by the ranch on his circuit. He'd been assigned to a new territory, but wanted to see how things had turned out. "Wanted you to know," he told Matthew as they sat on the porch, "the changes you helped start have spread. New land laws across 3 territories now explicitly protect widowers and orphans. The old loopholes closed for good." Matthew nodded, satisfied. "That's good news." "You changed things, Sullivan. You and that girl of yours. We just did what needed doing." The judge smiled. "That's usually how change happens." Winter came again, the world turning white and quiet. Matthew and Lily settled into the peaceful rhythm of the season. Long evenings by the fire, reading or playing checkers. Early mornings feeding livestock, breaking ice on the water troughs. Sundays at church, then dinner with Eleanor and other neighbors. On the anniversary of the day Matthew found Lily at the depot, they baked bread together using Sarah's recipe. The familiar scent filled the cabin, and as Lily kneaded the dough, she hummed Sarah's lullaby. "I remember more now," she said suddenly, "about my mama. She used to sing this song too, and she'd tell me stories about her sister Sarah, who lived on a big ranch out west. She said someday we'd go there." Matthew paused in stoking the fire. "You never mentioned that before." Lily shrugged. "I didn't remember before, but I do now." She continued kneading. "I think that's why I wasn't scared when I woke up here. It felt like I was supposed to be here all along." Maybe she was right, Matthew thought. Maybe this had always been the plan, disrupted by death and distance, but finding its way in the end. Spring returned, and with it calving season again. This time Lily needed less instruction. She moved with confidence among the cattle, knew what to do, when to call for Matthew, when to handle things herself. They branded the new calves together, a routine now rather than a public statement. But Matthew never forgot that first branding ceremony, never took for granted what it had secured for them. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Matthew added more land, more cattle. Lily grew tall and strong, her copper hair darkening slightly, her eyes still that startling blue. She had her mother's quick mind, her aunt's determination, and something entirely her own, a quiet joy, a certainty about her place in the world. She finished school at 16, the top of her class. The teacher wanted her to continue to the academy in Cheyenne, But Lily declined. My place is here, she told Matthew. This is where I belong. Part of him wanted to insist she go, expand her horizons beyond the ranch, beyond him. But another part, a selfish part perhaps, was relieved. He couldn't imagine the place without her now. So she stayed, becoming his full partner in the ranch. They added sheep, expanded the garden into a proper orchard, built a new barn. Lily had a gift with horses and began breeding them, developing a line known for its intelligence and endurance. Matthew watched her grow into herself, proud beyond words. Sometimes he caught himself looking for traces of Rebecca or Sarah in her face, her gestures. But increasingly he saw just Lily, wholly herself shaped by choice and circumstance, into someone unique. When she was 20, a young rancher from the next county began calling. Daniel Wilson was steady, hardworking, respectful. Matthew liked him well enough but worried all the same. Would marriage take Lily away from the ranch, from him? But his fears proved unfounded. Daniel proposed, Lily accepted, and they built a small house on Sullivan land. Close enough for daily work together, far enough for privacy. The arrangement suited everyone. Their wedding day dawned clear and warm. The whole community gathered at the church, then at the ranch for the celebration. Eleanor, now in her 70s, cried happy tears. Dr. Harrison, retired but still spry, danced with the bride. Matthew gave Lily away, his heart full, as he placed her hand in Daniel's. Later, as the music played and lanterns glowed in the dusk, Lily found him sitting alone on the porch steps. You okay, Uncle Matthew? She still called him that, though he had been her father in every way that mattered for 15 years. Just thinking. About what? About that day at the depot, about how different things might have been. Lily sat beside him, her wedding dress rustling. But they weren't different. They were exactly as they should be. Matthew smiled. Yes, they were. 3 years later, Lily's first child was born, a girl with copper hair and blue eyes. They named her Sarah, of course. Matthew held his granddaughter and marveled at life's circles. Here was Sarah again, in a way, and Rebecca, and all the love that had seemed lost but had only been waiting, dormant, for the right moment to bloom again. As Sarah grew, Lily taught her the lullaby, the one that had traveled through generations, across distance and loss, to find its way home. And when the child was old enough, Lily showed her how to brand a calf, how to hold the iron steady, how to count to 3. MS Star, the child would say solemnly, this is my family's mark. And it was, a legacy of choice and determination and love that would outlast them all. 20 years after he found a freezing child in a freight car, Matthew Sullivan sat on his porch, watching his granddaughter play in the yard that had once seemed in danger of slipping away. Eleanor was gone now, peacefully in her sleep. 2 winters passed. Dr. Harrison, too. A new generation ran the town, worked the land, but the story remained. The story of a man who fought the law with its own rules, of a community that found its courage, of a child who held a branding iron steady and claimed her place in the world. Sometimes visitors asked about the MS Star brand, curious about its origin. Matthew would smile and tell them it stood for Matthew and Sarah Sullivan. But in his heart, he knew it had come to mean more. Mark of survival, memory sustained. More than Sullivan. One evening, as the sun set over the land that would pass to Lily, then Sarah, then whoever came after, Matthew sat with his granddaughter on his knee. Tell me the story again, she pleaded, about how Mama came to the ranch. So Matthew told her about the freight car, the note, the branding ceremony, about Parker and Eleanor and Sheriff Davis, about family made through choice rather than just blood. And that's why we brand the calves, Sarah asked, though she'd heard the answer many times before. That's part of it, Matthew said. The brand says what belongs together. It says, this is ours and we protect our own. Sarah nodded, satisfied. I'll protect our own too, when I'm bigger. I know you will. Later, after the child was asleep, Matthew walked to the hill where Sarah, his Sarah, was buried. The lavender Lily had planted years ago now grew thick and fragrant, a purple cloud in the moonlight. He stood there, feeling the years in his bones but peace in his heart. We did all right, he told the silent grave. That girl of ours turned out fine. The wind moved through the lavender, carrying its scent across the ranch. Matthew closed his eyes and breathed it in. The smell of home, the smell of what remains when everything else falls away. Love, courage, the decision to stand your ground and fight for what matters. Those things no piece of paper could ever truly capture or take away. Those things endured, passing from one generation to the next like a treasured heirloom, like a well-made brand that leaves its mark clear and true. Matthew Sullivan had come to understand this in the 20 years since he pried open that freight car door on a frozen January morning. Family wasn't just blood and birth. It was choice and work and standing in fire together. It was witnessing each other's truth. It was finding the courage to say, "You are wanted. You belong here. This is yours as much as mine." As twilight gathered, Matthew made his way back toward the house. Light spilled from the windows, drawing him home like a beacon. Inside, his granddaughter's laughter mingled with Lily and Daniel's voices, a symphony of the life they'd built together. He paused at the gate, allowing himself this moment to take it all in. Through the window, he could see 3 generations gathered around the table. His family, not by accident of birth, but by choice, by perseverance, by love proven in fire. The MS Star brand had evolved in meaning over the years. To the cattle buyers, it marked Sullivan stock, known for quality. To their neighbors, it represented integrity and community. But to Matthew, it would always mark the day a 7-year-old girl with a scrap of paper labeled "Unwanted" pinned to her collar became something else entirely. Chosen, essential, home. And as he crossed the threshold into warmth and welcome, Matthew knew that this bond forged stronger than blood, stronger than law, was what truly remains when all else fades away.